Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at The Sinners, a graphic novel by Alec Stevens, published in 1989 by Piranha Press. Piranha Press was an imprint of DC that was trying to expand the readership of comics, making a lot of graphic novels and series that were more geared for adults. They figured there's this huge market out there, not many adults read comics, let's try to reach out to them. And they couldn't have picked a better artist and writer than Alec Stevens. Alec Stevens came out a few years before this graphic novel came out, drawing short stories for Fantagraphics, for heavy metal. For the most part, he'd adapt classic works of literature by Dennison and Dostoevsky and even H.P. Lovecraft. But for the most part, almost all of his stuff was non-genre based. It was just trying to reach an adult audience. And on top of that, he's an amazing artist. His just completely unique style. He comes from the fine art world, and you can kind of see it in his art. But some really beautiful stuff. Nobody draws quite like Alec Stevens, as you can tell by this cover already. We have a little bio of Alec Stevens, and we have the title page, and let's get into the graphic novel. So the narrator of this whole story is this, at the beginning of the tale, he's an old man, he's a beggar, but he's completely at peace. It seems like he's totally happy, being his lot in life, just wandering around and just like he's begging. And so now he begins reflecting upon his life, and that's this graphic novel is basically that, his life story. Things start off well. He grows up happy as a little toddler. His mother reads him stories. But then at a young age, his older brother Thomas starts to shun him, and he has no idea why. And this fills him with an amazing amount of grief, because he loves his brother Thomas. He says, "How could he treat me thus when I loved him so?" So he just doesn't understand. His father works for the government, and he's gone for months at a time, and he's also an alcoholic. They don't really get into it about if he's abusive or anything. They just mention that whenever the father leaves, which he constantly does for his job, he says that each day the sun shone less brightly, the sweet hymns of the songbirds grew fainter. And so it just seems like as the years progress, he becomes more and more his mood becomes more and more dark. And he feels like his family is even laughing at him. He has a dream that really unsettles him. This old lady is begging to a council to let her adopt a baby. They finally decide to let her have a baby, but she has to go through this small tunnel, walk through this tunnel with the baby. This tunnel turns out to be a gauntlet. All of the council members pop out with sticks and beat her. When she makes it to the end of the tunnel, they all applaud and offer her congratulations. And this gave him a life lesson. The narrator says, "So this must be the way of things." So it's almost this dream taught him that, life is just going to be getting beaten down if you ever want to get what you want. So he's at this very young age, he already has this pessimistic, very dark outlook on life. In school, none of the children seem to connect with him, or I should say he doesn't connect with any of them. But as we're reading this, we start realizing that, just like Dostoevsky or even Kafka, we can't rely on his narration. we start to wonder, is this just his perception? For example, he says when he won the leaping exercises at school, there wasn't enough applause. Nobody, congratulated him. And so there was just silence. So he takes that to mean that everyone doesn't like him. Or just maybe it was no biggie. So we're starting to wonder how much of this is just his paranoid perception. And of course, when you do have that outlook on life, people aren't going to like you probably. So he's probably becoming unlikable. We see him at Bible school here. Look at this crazy church. This is just completely abstract. A lot of the backgrounds in this are like that. Just really just bizarre buildings and stuff. He has an instructor there, and one day she's singing a song to him, and she has a birthmark on her face. He noticed it before, but on this day, it turns into a heart, and he was overwhelmed. I haven't really even pointed out just how good Alec Stevens' art is. I wanted to mention how he always does this style, the captions and the art. No word balloons within. But he breaks up the panels in a really interesting way. So it doesn't read just like Prince Valiant, those comics, or like those English children's comics, the old-timey ones, where it's always like a drawing and then a block of text. But the way he breaks it up, it reads a lot better than that kind of storytelling. I like it a lot more. So getting back to the story, seeing this heart, this birthmark turn into a heart, he goes home in a state of religious ecstasy. And he kisses his little brother on the forehead and says, "God loves you." And the little brother starts crying and tells his mother, but nothing comes of it. But that's just like how everything is in his life. It just seems like, doesn't seem like this terrible kid, but just nobody likes him. But once again, is that his perception? Is he just a weird, paranoid weirdo? So as it gets older, it just intensifies. The kids, his classmates start dating. He has no clue to how to even approach a girl. And of course, he's probably such a weirdo, girls would reject him. Or at least that's what he thinks. It's such a sad scene here. He's masturbating in his father's closet, having fantasies about the high school girls, all like begging for his favors. And then when he's done, he weeps bitterly and reproaches himself for even having such fantasies. I wish I could say I didn't know what that was like. One day he comes home and he hears a low sobbing coming from the master bedroom. His father's home. He's not at work. And God, look at this amazing stairwell here, just how abstract that is. It turns out the father resigned his commission from the government because he was passed over for promotion one too many times. His brother Thomas is there, and he says, "You're not going in there, cockroach." Because, he wants to talk to his dad, see what's happening. And Thomas really just seems to loathe his little brother. He also it seems like he's taken on the role of his father's protector. He's always by his side now. I love the bulk of his mother here. She's like as big as the Hulk. And so at dinner time, the father comes down the stairs wearing his full government regalia with his medals and ribbons. It's a very awkward meal. And then the father starts tearing the ribbons and medals off of his lapels and throwing them in the soup bowl, the bowl of soup. The eldest son, who we never find out his name, he says, "Father, why are you doing this thing? You worked so hard for those." The father just grabs him by the back of his head and shoves his face in his soup. And then he looks It looks pretty scary there. He says, "Does anyone else question my actions?" And so our narrator loses it. And he throws a casserole dish at his father with all of his might. And then runs out the door with Thomas in hot pursuit. And he runs right into the path of this automobile. And then we see this kind of almost like Alex Nino panel. And he sees these sparks, and then all of a sudden he says he's in a Twilight Land of his own fancy. So he's just in this beautiful dream. There's something I also wanted to point out about Alec Stevens. He has especially in this sequence, actually I just realized maybe this is a nod to Winsor McCay because he's in some kind of slumber land. And look how fat the outlines are and everything. Like this hand, really huge chunky outlines on all the objects. So it's a beautiful dream. He's in this wonderful, Twilight Land, as he says. He's handsomer than normal, more confident. He meets this woman named Diana. Instantly, they're taken with each other. And they look at the horizon, and this city approaches them with remarkable speed from right over the horizon line, right up to their feet, basically. And then all of a sudden, they find themselves in a vast hall before a powerful king. All of his subjects are bringing him gifts from the various regions where they live. And, it's a dream, so there's all kind of kooky dream imagery. This little waif girl gives the king a golden key that opens no earthly door. And then Diana says, "I would like to recite a poem that I wrote just this morning." And we find out that Diana is the princess. She's the daughter of the king. The king says, "Please do." And to our narrator's surprise, it's a poem that he wrote years ago in school. He wrote it for a girl that he had a crush on. He thought he could love her, and he thought until he was met with a look of disgust upon her reading it, and then instantly his love for her shriveled up. It's kind of a typical love poem that like a teenager would write, Everyone applauds the poem when she's done, which for somehow fills him with total mortification. And then Diana approaches her father, the king, and says, "You always said you would never refuse me anything. I want his head on a platter." And she points at our narrator. And then someone comes out with a head on a platter that looks just like his face. And then Diana kind of starts admonishing him. And, just like a dream, it gets more and more frustrating and nonsensical. He tries to run towards her to grab her hand, and it just seems like he can't reach her. And then he can no longer even see her. And we see this black panel here. I know that sounds crazy, but I love this panel. This is a lens of green. It's basically a Rorschach blot. And our narrator wakes up in his bed. His family's all around him, fretting. They're happy he's finally come to. And Thomas is there. He's looking at him, trembling, but no sound is coming from his lips. In fact, he never spoke ever again. He lost his ability to speak, maybe from the guilt. So he's in great pain. That night, his father leaves home, packs his bags and leaves. So he goes back to school once again. He's not fitting in. And the more and more we read this, the more and more we realize, yeah, he's probably just a paranoid schizophrenic. because I don't think anyone has ever been this hated in the world. So one day he's in study hall, and this popular kid in class kind of convinces the class buffoon. He's actually retarded. I don't know why he's in this school with everyone else. And he convinces this kid, Heinrich, he makes him even write a contract, kind of. He says that this gives me permission to burn your feet whenever I want. And then he proceeds to pull out some matches and start burning his feet until it's black. And the narrator's not doing anything. Finally, the popular kid leaves, and our narrator goes over to, try to help Heinrich, try to get his socks back on, at least. And then right then a teacher shows up who never liked our narrator, since nobody does. And he assumes that he is responsible. So many great panels on this. His colors are amazing. These are all painted. You can probably tell. I didn't mention that, but a lot of his color work is always beautifully painted. I love this panel right here. Look at this crazy orange. And so basically, because of this incident, he is expelled from school. I don't know why he doesn't say, hey, was that popular kid? But I guess snitches get stitches, and a kid who tells on another kid is a dead kid. So he goes back home. It seems like he's just stuck there. He doesn't have a job yet, and his mother just looks at him with disgust, he says all the time, even though, once again, I'm pretty sure that's in his head. And then finally he gets his high school equivalent and leaves home. So he goes to this college. Another nice panel there. Some beautiful stuff. And, of course, once again, he's an outsider. And nobody will let him into their colloquy. And, of course, that's probably his own fault. So he gets a job. He leaves school, gets a job in a small corporation. It's kind of interesting by how much this is written in the style of Dostoevsky or Kafka. You know, that dark, late 19th century, early 20th century writing. And everyone kind of dresses old-timey too in this. But it takes place in the modern day. We see computers here. It's such a weird kind of disconnect. I don't know if he did it for a particular reason, but it really does not feel, just by the way the characters talk and think, it just seems like an older sensibility than we have now. Well, back in 1989 even. And once again, all of his co-workers don't seem to like him, and he feels like an outcast. He kind of starts to resent all of his co-workers. Like they're basically, looks at them like they're all just complacent sheep. And one day this woman, his co-worker, says, hey, you're like me. We're different from them. We think a lot alike. And we have the same outlook on life. And he yells at her, no, I'm not like you. You're no different from them. And we have absolutely nothing in common. And she runs off crying. And even though he'd curse himself for his behavior, for doing this, he just, he's fucking crazy, this guy. Somehow they end up going out on a date and hanging out. The woman that he made cry. Of course, eventually, she'd find out that he was quite unlike her or anyone she knows, because he's a weirdo. And there was nothing he could say that would interest her. And then he would be the one reduced to tears. So it's like many of those pop songs. Judy's turn to cry. And so then he gets all these he gets a bunch of different jobs. Each one kind of more lowly than the last. And once, of course, he's miserable, as usual. And after all this time, he finally gets this notion. He's like, what I got to do, I got to go back home and renew the bonds, the familial bonds with my mother and my father and my brothers. And here he rents a car. The car breaks down, so he walks, he hitchhikes. He used all available means of travel. But then once again, this is why comics is so good for the unreliable narrator, because we read his words, but then we see what actually happens. So one of his means of travel, he obviously stole this guy's bicycle, because this guy's chasing him with some kind of club. It's like, come back here. So I like that, how even though we already know we can't trust him, and now we're like, okay, this guy isn't as blameless as he likes to appear. A lot of these problems he's causing himself, because he's not the best guy. So he makes it to his house. Look at this house. That's not a house. It's like a splotch. It's crazy, his architecture. And something's weird. Something odd's going on. Everything's in a state of disarray. Just gotta say once more, great panel there. And when he goes upstairs, he opens a bedroom door, and his father is having sex with this girl that he used to go to school with, like way back in grammar school. This redheaded girl. And his father and this woman, now a woman, they leer at him and laugh at him. And then all of a sudden his mind snaps, like really snaps. Of course, this probably didn't even happen this way. They probably weren't laughing at him, but that's how he saw it. And then we see his insanity. It's full on abstract now, just blobs of color. And just by his narration, he's talking about descending, like he's really cuckoo. Eventually he sees these two doors, one pale and one black. And then all these other little doors, which aren't as well delineated. The little doors open up, and it's almost like he sees all these moments in his life. And then the pale door, when it opens, it shows him all of the physical and material pleasures that society so highly regards. So basically, it's like the doorway to success. When he tries to walk through it, there's a sickeningly sweet smell that nauseates him, and he can't go through it. The black door opens, and he looks down to see like a cold abyss of lost suicidal souls. Basically, these are the unfortunates of the world. Of course, many of them bear his likeness because he's so woeful. And he falls into this abyss, and then darkness overtakes him once more. So now he wakes up from his reverie, and there's this old man and his daughter. I think they're homeless, and they've rescued him, and they're taking care of him. The woman says that my father saw you about to jump off of the bridge. So that was like in the dream, when he's about to fall into the abyss there. And he pulled you back, and we've been waiting for you to wake up. He thanks them profusely, and the old man says, "You would have done the same for me, wouldn't you?" And of course our narrator says, "I don't know," because he might have not done the same for him. He's not a very good person. And then he kind of runs away. So it seems like he's still pretty crazy. He's a little more lucid, but I like this panel here. It says, "And there, deep within the wreckage, it lay, that thing, the answer to all of my..." No, I cannot lie. There was nothing. So now he's trying to lie to us flat out, but then he admits that, no, there was nothing there. Everything's still just as shitty. There's nothing's going to save me. He goes back, he sees a fire, and the old man's sitting there. And he says, "What happened to the woman?" He's like, she's gone. She's no longer with us, he says. And so this almost feels like a nightmare too, but I think it's his fevered vision. He's still crazy. And the old man, he says, a man should destroy what is poisoning him before it destroys him. Right? And our narrator says, yeah, I guess so. And the old man pours the bottle of alcohol all over himself and jumps in the fire. And once again, proving that this guy's pretty nuts. He doesn't even seem that perturbed. He just sits there all through the night watching the fire burn down. He had gone through the back door in order to gain eternity, I thought. And all of a sudden, he says his heart, which has been hardening for years, he feels a break in two. Not since childhood had I been capable of expressing emotions so freely and clearly. I was able to love again, and love I would. So, yeah, this guy's pretty crazy, but it's almost like this guy, this old man, his suicide, it healed our narrator. And all of this dark brooding that he spent his whole life thinking paranoid thoughts about what everyone thought about him, it seems like it's all gone. It's been exorcised from his soul. And he says, and love I would. So basically he takes to wandering. And in his travels, he goes around doing odd jobs for people and basically tries to help everyone he meets. And it's not like an act. He really does seem to be full of love for everyone around him. Prays to God every night, thanks himself for his blessings, even though he's just basically a wandering, itinerant worker. And he's just totally content for the first time in his life, or at least happy. All these children respond to it. They can sense that he genuinely is this just kind man, full of love. And he gets older and older. People start calling him Santa Claus because he starts looking like him. And just to show how fully he's changed, he gets news that a former classmate of his who used to torment him is now, he's on trial for murder. So he's not going through a good time. And he feels genuinely sorry for him. It's not like he's faking it. He actually has sympathy and forgiveness for everyone. He says almost like he's become Christ-like, And so he goes back to his old home. It's been torn down. And there's these new houses. Sorry. These are just silly. These are not houses. And eventually he becomes too old to even work. And that's when he becomes a beggar. And it's almost like he's looking towards us. And he says, and how am I living now, you might ask? Day by day. And that's the last page. And we see him wandering off into the sunset. I really like this page, all this negative space here. This totally reminds me of Bill Sienkiewicz, sorry. And, but of course, I'm sure Bill Sienkiewicz stole that from Klimt or someone. I don't know. But, really nice. Not a very fun graphic novel. It's very kind of downbeat. But at first I was getting annoyed by it's like, oh, is this going to be just this guy whining the whole time? Because once you realize that he's causing all of his own problems, you're just like, oh, this guy's just an annoying whiner. But I was kind of fascinated by it, by the unreliable narration that he gives us. And, I mean, I think even the most... I guess normal of us, everyone has doubts sometimes. You get a weird vibe from someone like, I don't think they like me. And can you imagine how horrible it would be if it was always your whole life was like that? So it's kind of fascinating looking into the mind of this paranoid schizophrenic. And of course the art. That's the main reason I'm here. I love Alec Stevens' art. Such a unique style. But I hope you guys like looking at it too. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.